speaking from the Professional Speaker Manual, speech number 2, Speaking to Entertain.
Martha Greene has been a Toastmaster for 20 years and a librarian even longer. Today we are to pretend to be an audience of graduates and family and friends of the USC Graduate School of Library and Information Science. I will be president of the school and introduce Martha as our commencement speaker.
Sorry. It's okay. Hit the escape and
Martha Greene is our commencement speaker today. She has a BA degree in German and graduated from this very program in 1970. Since then, she has worked as a public librarian and administrator, public library administrator. In 2007, Ms. Greene retired from the Washoe County Library System. Please help me welcome Martha Greene, a commencement speech, Martha Greene.
Thank you, Madam President. Graduates, family, and friends, I am so happy to be here today to help you celebrate your graduation. Now, if you listened to my introduction, you know that I graduated from this very institute in the late Jurassic period. So you're probably saying to yourself, what can a dinosaur teach me about librarianship today? Well, my proposition is that although the tools change, librarianship has not. The heart and soul of being a librarian have not changed. It's to connect the customer with the book, the blog, the database, the exact information or story that they want in a timely and compassionate way. This has not changed. Only the tools have changed. I want to present to you a little skit about how tools have changed, but the basic transaction hasn't. There are two people in this skit, Miss Jones, the reference librarian, and Mrs. Brown, the customer. And I took this skit from a report that occurred in Casanova, that occurred in the book Casanova Was a Librarian. And the report was taken from a newspaper in 1905 in a small Midwestern town where the public library had just initiated a brand new service. Telephone reference! Think of that! You didn't have to go to the library, you could just call them up. So, the little skit goes like this. Ring, ring! Hello, this is Miss Jones. This is the public library. Hello, this is Mrs. Brown. Is this the library? Hello, this is Miss Jones. This is the library. Oh, good. Do you answer questions on the phone? Yes, hello, Mrs. Brown. How can I help you? Oh, good. I'm so glad. Well, my cousin arrived from Chicago yesterday. You wouldn't believe how long the trip was. She was so tired when she got here. Mrs. Brown, do you have a question? Oh, yes, right. Well, and she had the cutest traveling suit on. It was brown and it had white. Mrs. Brown, do you have a question for me? Well, let's see. And we were having breakfast this morning. She brought that new coffee from Chicago, you know, that really dark roast. Oh, so good. And I bought some pastries from Mr. Baker's pastry shop. Mrs. Brown, do you have a question? Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, so we were having breakfast, and I wanted to tell her about that book that I read, and I just can't remember the name of it. Now, I know you will know. Could you tell me a little bit about the book, Mrs. Brown? Well, let's see. You don't remember it? No, Mrs. Brown, I don't remember the book. I don't. Okay, well, there was a young lady, and she was in Boston. Or was it Philadelphia? And she fell in love with a count, Earl. Maybe it was a knight. I always get those British titles all mixed up. Do you know which book it is now? No, Mrs. Brown, I'm sorry, I don't. Tell me a little bit more. Well, I don't understand why you can't identify the book. I mean, after all, you do read every book in the library, right? No, Mrs. Jones, we don't actually read every book in the library. Well, what are you doing down there? Well, sometimes we're answering questions. Oh, well, okay. So, anyway, so she's gonna marry this Duke or Earl or whatever he was. But her father said she couldn't because, I forget why. Well, the book was Greene. Don't you recognize it now? No, I'm sorry, Mrs. Brown, but we don't shelve our books by color. Oh. Well, weren't you there when I turned the book back in at the circulation desk? No, Mrs. Brown, you see, librarians usually are working on the reference desk, not the circulation desk. Oh. Well, you're no help at all. Goodbye. So what does this little skit tell us about the stereotypes about librarians? Well, let's see. First of all, that everyone who works in the library is a librarian. Get over it! In the public's mind, everyone who works, including the janitor, is a librarian. That's just the way it is. I had to get over it. You had to get over it. All right. The other thing is, stereotype here is that publishers just send the library books for free. Now, as the former person in charge of collection development for Washoe County Library and a budget of $600,000, I can tell you the publishers do not send us every book for free. We have to pay for them, just like everyone else. And the other stereotype is that, or the other point I want to make is that customers do not remember the way that librarians index the information. They don't remember the author, they don't remember the title, they don't remember the publisher, they don't remember when the book was written. Fortunately, I know now there are databases and you could put in, it happened in Boston, a young lady who married a Duke or an Earl or whatever. So I know that this is now easier than it used to be. But get over thinking that your customers will come to you and say, I want that book by Randy Newman called I Want to Be Your Friend. No. They know the color of the book, they know the plot, they maybe know who wrote it, but don't count on it. The other stereotype is that we become librarians because we love to read. And that's true. But I think there's a more basic reason that people become librarians, and that is because they are curious. Now, as you get into the real world and you meet your colleagues, you will understand that I mean curious in both definitions of the word, both odd and inquisitive. For instance, when I worked at Los Angeles Public Library, I worked with a man by the name of Mr. Yancey. I can see him to this day. Mr. Yancey was germ-phobic to the extent that if there was no one else there to open the employee entrance door, he would be late for work because he was not going to touch that handle. He knew how many germs there were on that handle. He was a very odd person. Then there was Phyllis. I worked with Phyllis at Santa Monica Public Library. Now Phyllis lived on the 14th floor of the La Brea Towers. I'm sure most of you know it. This was a very upscale apartment complex built close to the La Brea tar pits. Phyllis lived on the 14th floor, and she once confided in me that she could never, ever have plants in her apartment. I said, well, Phyllis, why not? Well, I have to keep all the curtains closed. I said, why is that? Well, somebody might spy on me otherwise. The 14th floor, come on. So she was just a tad paranoid. The other thing about Phyllis was that she thought everything was about her. So much so that because the bus drivers went on strike on the Monday that she was thinking about riding the bus to work, meant that it was aimed at her. She was quite curious. You will also meet wonderful colleagues who can tell you the batting average of everyone who ever batted for the Los Angeles Dodgers. You will meet someone who can recount every battle of the Civil War in intimate detail. You might meet somebody like me. I am fascinated about how the brain works. I will read any layman's book on the brain. And everybody you meet in libraries will be a good cook. I don't know, there's some kind of requirement. Library potlucks are the best in the world! And that's one thing I really miss about being retired. Now, my late brother-in-law was a physician. And my sister is also a librarian, I confess, I'm sorry. She makes the big bucks, a lot more than I ever did. But he used to say to her, you know, librarians are missing a bet. One reason that physicians make so much money, because we speak Latin. You librarians are always writing about, oh, don't use jargon, use small words, really relate to your customers on their own terms. Absolutely not. You should use Latin. Your pay would go up, and people would probably say, oh boy, they're really smart. They speak Latin. So I'm going to give you some Latin terms that you can use when you're talking about your customers. Yes. First of all, we have Squalaticus domesticus. Now this is a customer you will love. He has the paper he needs, the pencils he needs, he knows which website he wants. He's fabulous, never gives you a bit of trouble. Then there's this guy. Instrumentum adactio. This guy is addicted to computers. If it's not on the internet, it does not exist. You could give him a phone book with the address he wanted, pointing at it. Oh, no, He has to have the database. Absolutely. That's this guy. Then we have Funiculus serpens. Sneaky snake. Be careful of this guy. Can also be a woman. When I was at Washoe County Library, Mary Claire was a colleague of mine, and she had helped this Scottish lady who was looking for her relatives. We had a database, you could do that. And Mary Claire made the mistake of saying to this woman, so you just type in the name that you're looking for. Well, there was a slight hesitation, but nothing too dramatic. Well, the woman left, and the next day Mary Claire was called into administration and was told that she had been very rude to this person. Mary Claire said, no, we had a fine transaction. What's the deal? Well, the deal was that apparently in Scotland, when this woman was growing up, only the lower classes knew how to type. So by Mary Claire saying, type it into the computer, she had insulted this woman. Can you believe it? I mean, you really wonder. Then this is another one you will love. Volumen confectori. This is what I am now. You go to the library, you find your books, you check them out. You bring them back on time, you didn't rip any pages out of them, you didn't spill anything on them. Piece of cake. You will love these people. They never give you any trouble. And actually, we had a lady like that at the Washoe County Library System. And, well, she was a little talkative. She was an older lady, and she lived by herself. So she was a little bit talkative, and she really liked to talk to Ed, and she would bend his ear for a long time. And we used techniques like, oh, Ed, you have a phone call, or, oh, Ed, it's time for you to go on your break. But he was very nice to this lady, and later on, she left us $25,000 in her will, so be careful. Be nice to these people. The last one is Altericus Bibliothecae. This is the traveling librarian. Now, occasionally you will get these. Just leave them alone. They're gonna honest to gosh, they're gonna reshelve the books for you because they're not quite in order. They might dust the computer also or something like that. So just leave these people alone. And then there is the loudmouth, Sonorius Bastiari. If you are a young adult librarian, you will probably run into these folks. Believe me, the teenagers, they are very loud, it is true. However, they have a lot of energy. If you can harness that energy and get them into a corner where they can all be loud together and not bother anybody else, you will have a wonderful source of energy. So there you have some Latin terms for your customers, and I suggest you learn more Latin terms. So probably all of you have had wonderful, stirring lectures on how wonderful it is to be a librarian. And it is. You will be underpaid. You won't be appreciated. You'll be overworked. And if you're a public librarian, every year you will be asked to do more with less and less and less. However, that's not what it's about. Librarianship is a job worth doing because every day that you go to work, you make a difference. You may inspire a child to love words and to love reading, and that will stay with them forever. You may help a struggling English language learner to find the exact class that they need to set them on the path to English competency. You may help a high school dropout to finally decide, yes, I need to get my GED, and I guess this is the time to make life better for myself. Or in these times, the libraries have been overrun with job seekers. So you may be the one that helps this out-of-work employee find a job. So congratulations on your commitment to doing a job that's worth doing, and congratulations on your graduation. Madam President.